Guys, welcome to my channel. I'm Kritika Dadij, your reader, and today I'm gonna read Legends of Pensam by Mamang Dai, a beautifully woven tapestry of stories from Arunachal Pradesh. This book blends memory, myth, and lived experiences, carrying us through the forest, rivers, and legends of the Adi people. In this reading, I invite you to slow down, listen, and step into a world where the past and present coexist like two streams meeting. So let's begin. In this novel, there are many chapters, and the first one is A Diary of the World. And of course, there are sub chapters as well. And in this video, I'm gonna read two chapters, and the first one is The Boy Who Fell from the Sky. So let's begin. When Hoxo first opened his eyes to the world, he saw green, a green wall of trees and bamboo, and a green waterfall that sprayed his cheek and washed the giant fern that seemed to be weaving to him. They were moving very fast. He was being carried on the back of a man whom he was later to call his father. All he knew at this moment was that he was strapped in a basket that was hard and scented with sweat. He could feel the strength of the man with his head pressed against the white back. He listened to the sound of a big heart thumping as they trotted silently through an unknown land. Hoxo would never recall the events before that journey throughout the green trees. When he spoke about the world, about the men and forest, he thought he could taste salt and blood and sense the terror of free fall. But he was not certain why this was, and exploded in a burst of red fire, blinding him with blood and ash. And that was why he thought maybe his eyes had been shut tight, as thought he preferred the darkness to that terrifying light. The color green always soothed him. It was the color of escape and solitude. He could not tell what it was that he had escaped or when, nor could he understand his need to track into the forest, sometimes to be alone. When they reached the house on the hill, a woman had run out to greet him. He instantly recognized her as someone kind and good. She was tall and young, and her face was vivid with love and anxiety. Oh my, she had said, a baby boy. She lifted him out of the basket. Even today, Hoxo could not remember any happiness greater than the moment of that touch he had known more than half a century ago. Hoxo immediately sensed there were no other children in the house. He had no idea how old he was. No one said anything, and no one ever asked him if he loved his father more or his mother, like he heard all the other children being asked. When he joined school, the children there stared at him. No one greeted him, and he remembered his own tentative smile full of hope and eagerness. Rocket was his first friend. Here, catch! Rocket threw him a stone that arced through the distance between them. It was a river stone, that Rakut had specially chosen for them to play with. There was a wonderful friendship. When Hoxo's mother made rice cakes and called his friends, Rak would be the first to arrive, grinning like an idiot, while Hoxo could hardly eat anything because he was so happy and full of pride for his parents' generosity. Once, when his father brought home a red squirrel, Hoxo ran all the way to Rocket's house, shouting at the top of his voice for him to come and see it. Every day the boy found something new. Every day they explored the hills further and further away from the village. And every day, for many years, they climbed to the flat top of their favorite hill and flung themselves down on the open ground, just like talking and speaking their thoughts to the trees, the cane bushes, and the sharp summer light. One day, Hoxo ran all the way again to call Rocket to come and hear something strange. The two boys tiptoed around the house and lifted themselves at full stretch to peer through the cracks in the bamboo post. It was real, I tell you, Hoxo's father was saying. I heard a splash, and when I turned, I saw the edge of the river lifted up and the water falling off the back of this long shining fish or snake, whatever it was. Then immediately it was gone. But I saw it. I tell you, Ta, how can it be? I tell you, I saw it. What did it look like? I thought I saw a head with horns. What? Everyone present knew the story of Biribik, the water servant. No one for generations now remembered the name of the first person who had seen it, but the event was fixed in their collective memory. It had happened on a night of heavy rain when a fisherman was alone with his nets by the river. He heard a rushing sound as the water parted, and then suddenly, when he looked up at the tree he was sheltering under, he saw a serpent coiled up in the branches, looking down at him with an ancient eyes. What shocked him the most was the fact that the serpent had a head with horns. The fisherman ran for his life all the way back to the village. But as everyone could have predicted, he never recovered for the effect of that terrible vision. Within a year, he had died of a wasting illness. Anyone studying the science could understand that something unnatural was bound to happen again now that Hobsaw's father had seen the serpent. In the small clearing in the middle of the forest, people have premonitions. Women dream dreams. Babies are born who grow up unnaturally fast, like deer's lions. Oops. Infant mortality is high. Old women still braid threads of wine and pray for safe passage. So no one was surprised when Hoxo's father was killed in a hunting accident shortly afterwards. A tragedy was expected. Ever since the arrival of firearms into these hills, hunting had become a passion. Suddenly, on any given day, a man would stand up, stretch himself, pick up his gun, and walk off into the forest. Many of the hunters disappeared for days, huddled in a margin or perched alert on a broad branch, In the forest beyond the village, where the hunters fanned out to go their separate ways, Hoxo's father was mistaken for prey. Deer, bear, the distraught man who shot him could not say. He only remembered a movement, a dark shape that he swore was definitely not human. He had heard a piercing scream of shock and rage afterwards and had rushed headlong into the thorny undergrowth to find his friend shot through the tender point just below the jaw. He was spilling blood and his eyes were staring wide. Huh? I am killed. He was crouched low and his gun was pointed into the ground. It was propped against his shoulder because his right hand had also been shot away. His friend shouted and cried, running through the forest like a madman. Help me, help me. The cries sent a shudder through the village. Everyone rushed out. Help me carrying his body. They worked all night, lifting the dead man and carrying him through the forest, dragging the body, pushing it, cursing and crying, sliding down the hill over the wet leaves and oozing mud. By the time they reached the village, the men were torn and bruised and splattered with mud and the blood of the dead men. It was a frightening sight. Hoxo's mother ran out screaming, dazed out of sleep. The young Hoxo had a vision of her splashing through the air like an incandescent flame. He understood everything, and the secret of love revealed itself to him in that one instant when he saw her embrace the inert body and press her cheek against the shattered head. Then he said, cover him, carry him in. The punishment for killing a man is death, unless a meeting can be called immediately, and the aggrieved party is convinced that the matter is negotiable. In this case, the poor friend was banished to live like an animal in the forest for a whole month. His closest kin could take him cooked food, but there were so many taboos on the type of food he could eat that it was simpler to let him fend for himself. No one opposed the exile, least of all the men whose fate it had been to mistake a man for prey. The one thing no one could explain at the time or at any time later was the small fish that was found in the dead man's shirt pocket. It was slippery and mashed, and the scales stuck to his skin even when they ripped open the shirt and tried to wipe away the blood. Maybe it was a fish he had caught in one of the small streams. Maybe it was something he was bringing back for Hoxo. Or maybe it was the spirit manifestation of something else. Who could tell about these things? And so it was the death of Luthor, famous chef of the Ida clan, father of the boy who fell from the sky, was mourned far and wide. And Hoxo's mother became one more widow in the village, where so many young women had lost their men in hunting accident. So our first subchapter is done, and the second I'll begin. The second one is the strange case of Kaleen the hunter. On one of my visit to the big city, I mentioned this village in passing to my friend Mona. She is a magazine editor, always looking for an interesting story, and she decided immediately to come with me to Gurtam town where I lived. From there, we would travel together to the village of widows. It was early summer when Mona and I arrived in Duyang, which is also my late mother's ancestral village. We climbed up the hill to meet Hoxo and his family. Hoxo's house was, as I remembered it, always full of people. There was his two sons and their wives, and now their five children, as well as friends, brothers, sisters, and relatives who came and went at any time just to talk, gossip, or to sit on the veranda sipping black tea and rice beer. Day or night, the fire was always burning, and the enormous pots and pans with heavy lid were full of food or contained enough left over to feed another 10 people. They were always visitors who appeared out of the blue, dusty, and full of stories about the journey, the rutted roads, the boat, crossing the thinning jungle. When we had climbed the hill to the house, a woman came out to greet us. It was Lucy. My late mother had told me stories about Hopso and her, and how they had met and finally got married. The boy who fell to earth and the girl born to the river women. Everything about Lossie's manner, her smile, her eyes suggested warmth and innocence. Then Hoxo's mother emerged, squinting in the strong sun, and like Hoxo when he first saw her, and like me, Mona too fell under her spell. She was very old now, but her mind was sharp and alert. She was quiet when I told her about Mona's interest in the stories of the village. Then she nodded and said that if this was what our guest wanted, maybe we would be interested in hearing a story her grandson Bodak had to tell. In this way, we heard the strange tale of Kali. It had happened quite recently and was still spoken of only in hushed tones. Colleen had been ill with malaria for weeks. Every time the fever seized him, he would cry out in rage and shout that he would find a medicine to beat the fever. Just you wait. Then he would huddle up in bed, shaking and sweating until the fever eased, and he looked around him with calm eyes. Again. One morning, a group of men decided to set out on a hunt. For many days, they had been staking out an area where the deer came to feed on the wild fruit that littered the forest floor. It was a mild summer morning, and Colleen started out with them, saying that he needed the exercise and the fresh air. The men were following the rules of the Kirk, a chosen number, beating an area to drive out an animal, while other waited in ambush, gun at the ready. Towards noon, the men saw a group of screeching, chattering monkeys shaking the branches of the trees across the stream that marked the boundaries of their hunting area. It was an unusual sight, as if the monkeys moving upstream, jumping from trees to trees, were waving and calling out to the men. The hunting party decided to fan out and follow the arboreal land. It was not clear exactly who had decided to go or stay, but Bodak recalled that everyone had begun moving upstream along the right bank almost at the same moment. So he was quite surprised to see Kalin suddenly emerged from the undergrowth of the opposite bank where the monkeys were. Bothak started back, but Kalin signaled for him to be quiet. Bothak noticed that Kalin was wearing his old fur cap, maybe because he had only just recovered from the fits of fever, and that he had a peculiar, challenging sort of smile, as if he dared anyone to try and stop him. Bothak guessed that he must be thinking of how monkey meat was good for the blood and how it was believed to cure malaria. So he said nothing at the time but urged Kalin to cross the stream quickly so that they could move up together. Kalin motioned for him to go ahead, indicating that he would be right behind him. Shortly after this, the bright afternoon suddenly faded. The band of monkeys disappeared, and Bodak felt the jungle starting to stream with buried warmth, as an oppressive silence settled on it. Every member of that ill fated group said later that they had all been astonished when a thunderclap broke the silence and rain began to pelt down. The skies had been clear only a moment ago. As they ran for cover, they heard a loud shriek and immediately knew that something unfortunate had fallen them. Bodak remembered that he had shouted loudly, calling out to everyone to be careful and to disclose their positions. Everyone was there except Kali. The man called Loma stood stock still with his gun and said that he had just fired at a monkey on the opposite bank. Without a word, Bodak rushed back down the stream, and all the men ran after him. As they splashed across madly, they saw Colleen slumped against a tree. It was raining heavily, and blood was pouring out of him. His body had been ripped along to shreds by the bullet that had exploded inside him. The men did what they could, which was not much, and while one runner was sent to inform the village, the others lifted Kali and headed towards the Cane Bridge further downstreams so that they could bring the body home in a somewhat intact condition. It is unimaginable how unwieldy and terrifying the body of a dead man can be, Bodak said. The body slipped and the men choked and shuddered as the torn limbs threatened to come apart in their arms. When they reached the bridge, Bodak and Loma carried the body ahead, while the others followed with their guns and Kalin's headgear. Just when Bodak had crossed the bridge with the body, the cane lashing came undone and the bridge swung and sagged in the middle, toppling the rest of the men into the stream. It was a cursed afternoon. The villagers lit bamboo flares and waited all night to receive the men who returned ill and dazed, as if they had come back from the realm of malevolent spirits. Kalin's widow, Omam, now lived with his parents. She had two small children and was barely in her mid 20s. When we saw her, she was still wearing her hair tied back in colorful bands like a gymnast. She fetched water, lit the evening fire, feed the pigs and chickens, and carried on with her life without stopping to pine or utter recriminations. The village, too, carried on. Like Omam, it was resilient in an unconscious way, as if programmed to be so. In the midst of injury and death, newlyweds fought, stormed out of there as if the business home deserted the children and hurled abuse at one another, as if the business of living and loving was a temporary arrangement. They came back after a month or two, looking nervous and sheepish, and finally settled down to a kind of heaving, unpredictable domestic life, cursing and laughing. But there were always the few who never returned. Their rage and confusions carried them so far away, beyond the mountains and down the rivers, that those they left behind learned to live without them. Sometimes they were remembered in songs and stories like the dead. So that's all, my dear. These are the two sub chapters, and thank you so much.